Coming to junior college planning night. I give credit to the students I see here. Hopefully, you find the information useful. Just so you know, we're going to go through quite a bit of information tonight, and please keep in mind this information is rolled out through the entire spring to your son or daughter. And so we're giving you kind of an overview of what's going to be covered, but we don't present all this information in one shot to the students like this. Counselors have already started junior meetings, okay, and we're rolling all this information out over the course of the spring. I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. And secondly, we used to just offer kind of a grade 9, 10, and 11 planning night, and then a senior planning night. And as the years went by, we found that junior year where it's so specific, we decided to split that up. So we do have a grade 9 and 10 academic planning night. That's a separate event. And then we have a specific to juniors planning night as well. We also do a senior college planning night in the fall. So we try to offer as much as we can to get word out to parents. We try to make things as transparent as possible. We know the process can be overwhelming, and so we think communicating as much as possible is something that's pretty important to us. As you can see, we're having technical difficulties. Student is working on it right now. Hopefully, we get up and running very shortly. However, everyone does have the copy of the slideshow, so I really apologize for this. Again, hopefully we get it fixed very shortly. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to work through the PowerPoint or the Google slideshow. We should all have one of these. Additionally, in the back, we had a flyer for our college fair that Burlington High School co-sponsors. We have some other sign-up sheets that we'll talk a little bit about later in the night. And let's see what we got here. So if we look at the first slide, it says BHS Counseling Department. That's the list of the school counselors at Burlington High School. I'm sure you're all aware of how to find and access the counselors. We just like you to have the names in front of you, but your son or daughter has been assigned a counselor. That counselor's been working with you since students were in grade 9. And so we like that model. We get to know students that way. And now that we're into the college process, it really helps with that relationship that we've built to move through that process. So the counselor contact information is there. Again, my name's Joe Adebato. I'm I'm the director of counseling. I'm also a school counselor here. We have Lisa Smith with us, Emily Minty, and we have our intern, Jack Fitzgerald. So each counselor is going to take a couple of slides as we work through the night. The next slide speaks to the Burlington High School Counseling Department, our developmental model. So the developmental model, we just like to explain to parents, is in the counseling department, we have specific goals that we try to achieve each year with students, developmentally as well. And so certainly this is the time now where students are going to be doing post-secondary exploration. We know about 90% of our students go off to 2- or 4-year colleges, but we also have students that go on to military workforce apprenticeship programs. So again, our goal in the counseling department is to help students plan that out. But given the fact that 90+% of our students go off to secondary ed, we think these college planning nights are really important. Again, we're trying to take the mystery away. I'll turn our pages. Okay, so right now, counselors, again, we started our meetings. I'm not sure if parents know. I know the students probably know. All the juniors have a directed study this period. So what that means is they have essentially a study period dedicated to working on, some students choose to do homework, but this time is a great time for the counselors to meet with students. So we've been calling students down through their study hall. We're not pulling them out of academic classes to meet with their school counselor. And most of the counselors are doing group and one-to-one meetings okay? And so again, counselors have been rolling all this out. We have a new college software program. It's called Naviance. We did use Naviance from 2006 to about 2021. So we used the program for a long time. We tried another program called SCORE, and we've been using that for the past 3 years. Both are relatively, we feel that both programs are pretty robust, but we thought as a department, when we went through it, we really felt Naviance was more robust with some of the things we're trying to do, not just college stuff. Naviance has a very good career component. It also allows us to post scholarships much easier. So we plan to continue to use that. We are very confident in our ability to roll it out successfully. Again, we have experience with it, and we think it's going to be a great tool for your children and for you, which is why you have those sign-up sheets tonight. If you fill that information out tonight, we'll take it. You'll get an auto email, and you'll be able to start to access the program. All the counselors have Google Classrooms. So we ask students to join those Google Classrooms. That's where information will be communicated. Again, I had mentioned one-to-one and group meetings are going to be happening. And counselors meet with students, right? So we're meeting with them 3, 4, 5 times before the end of the year. But a bulk of this is going to be done individually by the student or with you as the parent. They're going to be doing the research. They're going to have to take that step to really dive into that information. So we're certainly here to guide and help, but students are going to need to make sure they're taking the right steps to do the research. And the goal by the summer is really, and some students already have this, but a personal list of colleges. We want students to have that list developed. Again, a lot of students have it completed now, and it's not a set list, it's a working list. But again, if students want to go on college visits, whether it be April vacation in the summer, it's good to have that list. A little bit more on Naviance. Again, it has a good career. It has a good career aspect to it. I'm on why Naviance. Thank you. It has a good career aspect, as I said. We are able to post enrichment opportunities on there. You can do a lot of college comparisons. You can determine, which we'll talk a little bit about in a couple of slides, reach realistic and safety, using scattergrams, and then fast forward to senior year. This program allows us to send student transcripts, teacher recommendation, counselor recommendation. We can send everything through this program to the colleges. Okay, and then you as a parent or as a student can see when things have been submitted, you can track. So Naviance is a pretty powerful tool in that sense, so it allows you to do that. And then, as I said, we'll talk about the scholarship program a little later. We have a very, very strong, competitive scholarship program here at the high school, and we post scholarships as well. So again, this is where students are spending the bulk of their time on the research aspect of the college process. And so this is when students need to start to narrow things down. There's probably about 5,000 to 6,000 colleges in the United States alone. And then there's even more than that, throughout the world, right? So there's a lot of colleges and universities. Students need to start to narrow that down, okay? And so these are the most common ways to narrow things down. There could be other mechanisms to narrow a list, but these are the most popular ways to narrow that college list down. And we all know colleges offer a variety of majors. So if students are interested in a particular major, certainly that's a way to narrow your list down. You need to know and be aware of maybe there's a college you are very interested in. You want to make sure that college has a program you're looking for. So, if you're looking at Boston College and the engineering, and you're interested in engineering, you probably wouldn't want to look at Boston College right now because they don't have a engineering program. So, again, major can help narrow things down. Location, have this conversation, up front. What's going on with location? Are we staying in New England? Are we going to go expand? And this is when we hear about conversations students have with parents, and it is interesting how it is a pretty wide net when they start in junior year. A lot of students tend to narrow it down. Most Burlington High School students are staying in the New England area. That's not from us, just promoting New England area colleges. I think it's geographically, we're lucky where we are. There's a lot of colleges and universities, but I think students end up staying closer. But we do have students over the years, I think with the ability to Google colleges, with social media platforms, students are exposed to a lot more. So we have more students looking down south, out west, But again, location would be important. Do you want to take a flight every time you go back to campus? Would you prefer to drive? Those types of things. Again, campus size. Do you want a big college or university? Burlington High School has around 950 students. Small, you get to know your teachers. Might be too small, so students have to think about the size, the campus size. A lot of the bigger schools do try to make it feel smaller. Like UMass Amherst has an engineering building. I think the Honors College they're in a separate dorm. So a lot of bigger colleges try to make it feel a little bit smaller. Cost, of course, we know that's a big one, right? What's the cost? Again, you want to look at sticker. All the colleges have a sticker price. But oftentimes, students, we find, depending on the college, could qualify for some financial aid or scholarships. And so we really try to tell students to, when you're applying to colleges, still cast that wide net of what you're interested in. And as we go through the process, you may take things out because the cost is too high, but you don't necessarily know what kind of financial aid package you're going to get or what kind of scholarship you're going to get. And some colleges like students coming from a certain geographic area, so you may be likely to get some money taken off just because if you're applying to a college down south that doesn't have many Massachusetts students, maybe you qualify for some scholarships that way. Housing, what's the availability of housing? Athletics. If you're a student interested in Division I, II, or III athletics, that would be another way to narrow the list down if a student really wants to participate in sports. And then some colleges have special and specific programs, whether it be a 5-year, a 4+1 program. So some colleges might have specific programs students are interested in. So resources, there's a college fair that's on the flyer. It's coming up on March 12th. We co-host it with several other Middlesex League schools. There's usually a good showing of colleges, and it really is a college fair. There's about 150, 200 tables set up. College reps are there to answer questions. We'll talk to students more about that specifically and send out information. But when you go to a college fair, I suggest you have a list of colleges. We're going to try to email the list so everyone has it so you know who's there. But if you walk in there without a little bit of direction, it can be overwhelming. You might not know where's the best place to stop, that type of thing. And so it's a good idea to have a list. And again, you meet with the rep. We talked about Naviance. In the fall, we had about 60 colleges and universities that came to Burlington High School, and that happens every fall. And we invited juniors. For the past couple of years, juniors have been invited. I don't know if any of your children mentioned it, but we basically have reps that come here for about 45 minutes or so, and they talk a little bit about their college or university. It's like a commercial for that college, really. But students get to hear from the rep from that. Usually it's the rep reviewing the Burlington applications too. So they're very personalized meetings. We publicize this throughout the entire fall, and students get the process of how to sign up. That's another great way to connect to some colleges. Of course, we all know social media, Google, TikTok. There's a lot of opportunity to research colleges that way. Again, we mentioned College Fair. NACAC is an association that, if you were to Google them, go to their website, they post a variety of college fairs that happen throughout the year. College Board, all your children took PSATs with us at the high school. So because you took the PSATs, students have access to College Board's Big Future. It's another college search engine. And then actstudent.org. Again, we've heard of ACTs, the standardized test, but they also have some opportunities to do some searches. Campus visits, it's another way to research and look at colleges. There's a variety of opportunities. The standard open house, you find out every college publicizes it. You sign up, you go, it's a formal tour. Those actually can be pretty effective. If you know someone that lives on the campus, that can give you a more personalized tour, even better. Sometimes you can have an overnight visit. And then if your children do participate in sports, sometimes summer camps. I know my daughter did a summer volleyball camp at Endicott. She loved that campus. They're kind of expensive though, but again, it was an opportunity to see what a campus is like and get that feel. So sometimes through sports programs, you can do that. And then we always say check the website, right? You want to check the website for the most up-to-date information. So as the students are navigating this process, one of the things students need to do with that list, right? We need to narrow that list down. We talked about all the different factors, right? Major, housing opportunity, financials, whatever the case may be. And as we're narrowing that list down based on those factors, we're also categorizing those colleges, all right? And how are we categorizing that? Well, we're looking at the GPA, students' grades, extracurricular activities. We're using that to help us look at a college and start to categorize it. So for example, a reach college, a college that a student does not hit the requirements, so you're below what they're asking, or it's a very competitive college and accepts a small percentage of students. So some of the, we all know Ivy League schools, right? 6 or 7% acceptance rate, okay? You just have to be aware of that. And if you apply, and it's not a game where you can say, you know what, I'll apply to 10 reach schools and I'll probably get into one. That's a very risky game to play, okay? Because that percentage is the same at each school. And we have our students that go off to Ivy League schools, and we encourage students to apply, but you need to be aware when applying. It is very competitive. So when you're making your list, you want to keep that in mind. So that's what a reach school, realistic. It's looking good. You're meeting the requirements. Your GPA might exceed or match their GPA expectations. The counselors here, our counseling staff right now, I think the rookie counselor is close to 15, how many years? 18 years. Emily's still the rookie, and she's got 18 years. So my point is, the counselors here have a lot of experience and past history, so that it plays into this as well. We have a pretty good understanding of how, not that we have the crystal ball, but we have averages, and so I think that plays into kind of determining this as well. So if we feel a college is realistic, we would categorize it as such. And then a safety student far exceeds the requirements. If students really are at a point where they're beyond what the school requires, we would call that a safety. And then a financial safety. So is there a school out there that you feel you have a very good chance to get into, and you're going to get a very good financial aid package? So again, that's kind of how we categorize all the colleges as we're navigating through them. One of the things that we're trying to update in Naviance now, it's not fully updated because we're trying to pull data from SCORE, but as soon as it is, we're going to have something called scattergrams, which can be very helpful. How many have seen scattergrams before or are familiar with them? Okay. So scattergrams, it's kind of like a little plot plan about students that have been accepted to various colleges and universities. It provides us with averages, and so we can see the green circles, right? Accepted. We have the red triangles not accepted, all right? And so this is an example of what that means. And so this can kind of help when students are thinking about reach, realistic, and safety, looking at averages. Like we see the kids up in the 75%, 50%, and even 25%, right? What's that? Looking at that at 3.0, right? Student with a 3.0, very, very highly likely you're going to get into Bridgewater State, all right? Now we start going a little bit lower, and that's where things can potentially be problematic, especially if that's a school you're really interested in, all right? NYU, for another example, you can see a little bit more competitive, okay? They're not, and one thing I want to mention too is it's not just GPA, it's GPA and teacher recommendations, counselor recommendation, activities, those types of things. So NYU really looks at activities as well. So it's not just about grades. That's an example of NYU. Go next slide. So again, the biggest thing colleges look at is the transcript, right? They want to see the courses that our students are signing up for and taking and being successful in, all right? So if you're taking all APs, but you're barely keeping your head above water, getting all Ds, that's not going to help, right? So we want to make sure you're also in the right spot. Some of the more rigorous colleges that we've looked at over the years, comparing that to student transcripts, senior year, and I think most parents here know that, that senior year is really, that's not the time to back down. That's the time to really kind of keep that trajectory going up. So we want a challenging senior year. We have AP and dual enrollment classes. Those are certainly courses, if students are successful, that look great for competitive colleges. Math through pre-calculus or calculus, all 4 years in 5 core subjects. So the 5th core subject would be world language. So a lot of colleges like to see students continuing in a world language. And then specific courses, requirements for more competitive programs. So I think, if you're interested in engineering, have you taken physics? If you're interested in nursing, have you taken human anatomy? That type of thing. So course selection process has pretty much begun. We are rolling things out. We emailed students today with the program of studies. Teachers are going to be making course recommendations after break. Students will be meeting with their counselor to start to talk about courses for next year. Again, senior year, we don't want to back down from the senior year challenge. Aspen portal will open up, and students can sign up. And again, preserve your GPA. That simply means continue to be successful in your courses. Don't put yourself in a position where you're in over your head. We want our students to be successful in the classes. And then, in terms of admissions, checking websites now, believe it or not, AI, we know, is very powerful. So, checking the specific websites, getting the specific requirements, I think, is an important piece. Oh, right. So the reason we reference the UCal schools is they actually require students to take a fine arts class. So if a student was interested in the university system in California, they want students to take a fine arts. So, and that's something we try to explain and tell students. We do have some students that will apply to those schools as well. And then through the course selection process, again, for senior year, we encourage students to try to take advantage of dual enrollment classes and virtual classes. Virtual classes, I think, come into play if you have the opportunity to take a class that we don't offer that you're really interested in. So, for example, criminology, American Sign Language. We have several other online options that can help expand a transcript beyond the walls of the school, showing what a student's actually interested in. All right, again, not mandatory, but it's an option if a student wanted to try to explore some other options. And we list our dual enrollment classes there as well. Program of studies, again, we just sent all that information to students today, so our updated program of studies is now available for next year. All right, now I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Minty.
Thank you, Mr. Adebato. I'm so glad the slides are working now. We've never had that happen before. I've been 16 years here, but 18 altogether. So my part is to talk about all these different, what are the factors that admissions committees are considering when they're deciding whether or not to accept a student. And transcript is the first on the list because at every single school, whether it's a school with a higher admission rate or those super low admission rates, transcript is still always, none of the other factors are more important than making sure that they've done well in their courses and so they're prepared to also do well in their college courses. Those next 3 items, though, I'd say are important factors, particularly at those really selective institutions like Mr. Adebato mentioned. So at those places that have an admission rate under 50%, especially under 30%, pretty much every student who applies has a great transcript. So the way that they differentiate students is then those other personal factors, which they learn about in recommendation letters. And I'm going to say more, by the way, there's a slide about each of these, okay? But recommendation letters, activities, their essay. Actually, I would put demonstrated interest next before standardized tests too, because most colleges are still test optional at this point, and demonstrated interest has become a bigger and bigger factor. Demonstrated interest we don't have a slide on, so let me just say what that is about is since students tend to apply to a lot more colleges now than they used to, colleges don't want to just offer their precious spots to students who have no interest in going there. Because if they do that, then they offer a bunch of spots, no one chooses to go there, and then they have to start all over again. So some ways that students can indicate that they're genuinely interested and didn't just toss in an application at the last minute, one of the most powerful ways is to actually go on a college tour, especially if it's a local college. So there are a lot of local colleges that if a student hasn't taken the time to actually go on an official visit, they may hold that against them. But if it's beyond an hour or 2 hour radius, that would not be the case. Another great way to demonstrate interest is to come to those admission rep visits in the fall when they come to the school here. So it'll happen again next fall. If it's a college they're planning to apply to, it would be a great idea to go to that visit when they're at our high school. And then this is a little creepy, but very true. We found out, we got invited several years ago to actually meet with an admissions officer at a nearby highly selective college and to also watch their committee make decisions about whether to accept students. And for most every student actually, but especially when they were kind of on the fence, they could very quickly pull up a screen that just showed if that student had opened any of their emails. And if they hadn't opened any emails, generally they would say nope and move on. It didn't, now don't stress out and feel like you have to open every email. It wasn't like that. It was really just, have they opened no emails? Then we know they're really not that serious. And then another level of creepiness, but helpfulness in the case of one student, was there was a student where they were kind of on the fence about her, and she had shared that theater was what she was probably interested in majoring in. And believe it or not, they could even see that she had clicked on the theater part of their website. And that was enough for them to say, yeah, wow, this student is clearly very, very interested in us, and she's fairly qualified, and they did decide to take her. So just don't want to hold back that information from you. But so on the transcript part of it, this is, you've probably seen this before, but just the GPA scale that Burlington uses is a weighted 4.0 scale, and it exactly matches the scale that all of the UMass's use and our state university system, which is why we use it. You'll notice that the CP on the right, that stands for the college prep courses, is kind of the traditional unweighted GPA scale, where if you have all A's, you'd have a 4.0 GPA, and all B's would be a 3.0 GPA. If a student here is taking an honors course, though, they get an extra 0.5 because of the fact that those courses are more challenging. But don't get lost in, like Mr. Adebato said, I think I've noticed a trend over the last several years of students starting to think they're going to do better just by taking every honors and AP course they can take. But you'll notice, really, if you want to stay at a 3.0 or above, which is a minimum that most colleges prefer, you do still need to be getting A's and B's in those courses. And even though we give a full extra point for AP or dual enrollment / our new term is concurrent enrollment courses, yes, a C would be a 3.0. However, the college is not only seeing the GPA, but they're seeing those actual final grades. And they don't want to see a student who has mostly C's. Most colleges prefer a majority of A's and B's. So this is just a little tour of what our transcript looks like in 3 parts, because it's kind of small and fuzzy otherwise. So top part, most important thing to know is just that the total average GPA goes there. So when students apply next year to college, that GPA will be the average of their final grades from grade 9, 10, and 11. So each of those 3 years counts for 1/3 of their total GPA. And if you're curious what their current GPA is, you can see that they still have access to the SCORE program. I'm hoping we'll have their GPAs uploaded on Navient soon as well. Oh, good. But if they look on Naviance or SCORE right now, they'll see their GPA, which is, at the moment, it's the average of their grade 9 and 10 GPA. And then after this summer, their junior year will be averaged into that, and that will be the GPA when they apply to college. Then the next part of the transcript, that's really the more important part that the colleges are focusing on. This is where they actually see not just that total GPA, the average of all the courses, but they see the story of what are the actual courses that student has taken each year, what levels were those courses, and what were the final letter grades. So it's different than a report card. Don't freak out, they're not gonna see every quarter grade, or if they did badly on a mid-year exam, they just see the final average. And you'll notice that grade 12 does list the courses they're taking and the levels, but if students apply early action or early decision before November 15th, there won't be any senior grades available yet at that point. We do send an update around mid-November when first quarter grades come out, so they will get that, but they may have already reviewed the application and made a decision before that. Yeah, and then we send 2 more updates. We send an update actually right about now, it was last week for our current seniors, with the semester average. And then after they graduate, we send their final transcript to the college. Colleges just like to keep an eye on the fact that their grades are staying fairly consistent and they don't get senioritis. And the bottom of the transcript is really just a key for those colleges to understand what our different levels and grades mean. All right, along with the transcript, speaking of a key, we send a profile of our high school and a longer explanation of what courses we do offer, the fact that sophomore year students can't take more than 1 AP course, what is calculated into the GPA and what is not. So our local schools may be familiar with that, but some of the other schools, they need more context. So all that is on the school profile. And then, it's still me, yes. Sorry, that was a typo there. We had kind of talked about how to divide up the slides a little bit earlier. So moving ahead to the standardized testing part. I did say truly most colleges since COVID, even before COVID actually, there was a trend with more and more schools not requiring SATs or ACTs. But during that first COVID year, none of them could require it because it wasn't safe for people to come and take the test. And so most schools learned during that 1 year where they couldn't require it that not only did they not get worse applicants, but many said they actually felt like they got better applicants when it wasn't people restricting themselves by the test scores. However, okay, so you'll still see most schools test optional at the moment. And I kept expecting every year, what's going to happen? All of a sudden, are more people going to require them? And it's been really steady for the last 5 or 6 years that in the first year or two, the Florida and Georgia public universities did start requiring them again. They still do. And then last year, I believe it was, that a small handful of those most selective schools did begin to require them again, but not even all of them. So the main point is it is important to look at individual college websites to see what their policy is. But if they do say that they're test optional, they are truly promising that if someone doesn't send test scores, it does not disadvantage their application in any way. And actually, any webinar I've been to or reps I've met with, they report on, what % of their students when they're test optional did or didn't send their test scores and what % were and weren't accepted, and it's pretty much 50-50. But anecdotally, the majority of my students haven't sent test scores. I have 50 or so seniors every year and probably 5 or less that have actually sent their test scores. So when you're looking at those scattergrams, yes, there is an SAT and ACT access, but you should ignore it right now because all of those acceptances were not based on test scores because the colleges didn't have them. In most cases. If you'd like to also just see a bigger list of the schools that are still currently test optional, that website fairtest.org tries to stay up to date. And I guess I should also mention, this is less common, but it is true at a few popular places, such as Worcester Polytech, WPI, and the University of California schools are what is called test blind. And that means they will not even allow you to send your test scores. So it's not a matter of requiring or being test optional where they give you the choice, but they just will not look at them. Okay. So a little more next on just the options. So even though most schools are test optional, we continue, and I definitely continue to recommend that my students still take either the SAT or ACT at least once, just in case they do discover a college they love that is going to require it. But even if, let's say, 2 or 3 years from now, they're applying to transfer and maybe colleges at that point change their policy and start requiring it again. If they take the test now, those scores will still last. So colleges, if they require a test or if they give you the option to send one, SATs and ACTs are totally equal in their mind. Most people here, I'm assuming, are more familiar with the SAT, just because that test company, the College Board, is from the Northeast, and so they've promoted the test more in this area. But nationwide, every year it's kind of a close to 50-50 battle of, there are some years where more students take the ACT nationwide and some years where more take the SAT. But colleges don't look at one as more or less impressive than the other. So what students should do is take the tests that they're more comfortable with and they're going to get the higher score on, because then they send that score. Some parts are very similar, but the biggest differences here, and I'm assuming most students that you have here have taken the practice version of the SAT, so you're familiar with the fact that the score on the SAT is just based half on math and half on reading. One big difference for the ACT is that they have just 1/3 of your score is math, and then they have 2/3 are actually reading. They also, something they have that the SAT doesn't, is an optional science section. So it's not required to take that section, but if a student is strong in science and wants to opt into taking that science section, that might be an opportunity to showcase that strength. Then the next really big difference, these are big changes that have just happened in the last year or two, but both SAT and ACT used to be on paper, and your score was just based on, how many total questions do you get right or wrong, regardless of whether you get the easy, medium, or hard questions wrong. However, starting last year, SAT now went only online, and now they score differently. They used what's called adaptive testing. So during the first half of the test, everyone gets similar content, but depending on how they do on that first half of the test, on the easy, medium, and hard questions, they get tracked into either the easy or the hard version in the second half of the test. And if they get tracked into the hard version, they will get a higher score, even if they don't get many more questions right. But if they get tracked into the easier version, it will be difficult to get higher than an average score. I'm not telling you that to discourage you from the SAT, just to tell you it's important to be aware of, get plenty of sleep the night before, make sure you eat breakfast, make sure you take your time on the beginning of the test. The ACT does not use adaptive scoring, so they still use that old model of just based on your total number of questions, right or wrong. They give the option of paper or digital, but whether you do digital or paper, they don't do adaptive scoring. And then, I guess, sort of an important thing to mention, I think it's less important, but still helpful to be aware. The SAT is a potential site you can choose to take the SAT, as long as you register in time before we run out of space. But unfortunately, we are not a site for the ACT. But I can tell you a lot of nearby places that do offer it, like Belmont and Woburn. And the sooner you register, the better chance you have of getting into your preferred location. Oh, no, I guess just the essay part. To be honest, there is no essay on the SAT anymore. There was a period of time where there was an optional and they just took it out. The ACT, it's still not a regular part of the test either, but they do, just like having an optional science section, they have an optional essay you could do as well. All right, so as far as when to take it and how to register, it's not like the PSAT where you turn in a registration form to us. You register directly on the website for either test agency. And we would recommend, even if you're not going to apply early action or early decision anywhere, your testing should be completed by January of senior year, because some regular deadlines are January 1st. So if you need to be able to share test scores, you need to have that, like, the latest test you should take would be December. But for most students, we would recommend to try to register and take one this spring, and then if they'd like to take it a second time, sometimes people, if they're nervous or unfamiliar with the format on the first time, or if they get their scores back and might want to do a little work on the things that they didn't do as well on, and feel like they can put in more prep time before the second time. Sometimes when you take it a second time, you might get a higher score on the whole thing, or even on just one section or the other. And most colleges will do what's called super scoring. If you send your scores from both times, they'll combine like your highest math score and your highest reading score. But taking it more than twice, there's no limit, but it's also, there's really no reason to take it more than twice. The test companies, who could only benefit from people taking it 4 or 5 times, are very honest about the fact that statistically speaking, when you take it more than twice, they don't see much movement in scores. So I would recommend everybody choose one test and take it at least once this spring. And then maybe if you're planning to apply early, they have some summer tests where you could take it a second time, or September or October where you could take it a second time. And then this is super important. It's become more complex, but really important to be aware of. There are application fee waivers. So the test is $68 roughly for either one of them. But if you're in an income range that would make you eligible for free or reduced lunch, you would be eligible to take the test for free. But not only that, if you're eligible to take the test for free, next year you would also be eligible to not have to pay for any of your college applications. And college applications otherwise range from $50 to $100 each, which is another reason it's not a good idea to apply to too many reach schools. So you might be thinking, well, free or reduced lunch, many people don't bother filling out the application because lunch is free anyway, but that is still the way that we can verify that you would qualify for the fee waiver. So if you didn't turn it in earlier this year and you're just curious if you might be eligible, we'd still be happy to either, there's a paper copy or an online copy that we can forward to you. It gets turned into the cafeteria, and it's important to also check the box that says, yes, please share my results with the counseling department. Otherwise, they keep it confidential. We used to get lists, and we don't get lists anymore. Test prep, just super briefly, I guess, you probably received the information that we have a partnership with Kaplan Test Prep, where Burlington residents do get discounted rates if your student would prepare best by taking kind of group classes. It's equally valid if they just put in their time individually using a test prep book and take practice tests, so it just depends on the person what's more effective. Also important to be aware, in some cases, colleges may require a test of English proficiency if your students the policies vary from college to college. So at some colleges, they might say, like, if you've just been in the US for less than 3 years, they might require it, but others, it might be within the past 8 years. So that's something to look into if you moved from another country, or if your student was in an English learning program at any point in time. And maybe I should have said this last part before too, but if a college is test optional, it's only a good idea to send your scores, at least if those scores are average for the college or above average. It won't hurt you if you don't send scores, but it can hurt you, unfortunately, if you send scores that are lower than average to a test optional school. As the rep said, that same one where we found about the demonstrated interest, they can't unsee them. They wish they could, they're test optional, but if someone chooses to share them and they see that they're lower, it will hurt your odds. So wait to get the results back before you decide where to send them or where not to send them. Okay, then recommendation letters. That most colleges will require a letter from the counselor, so it's important for everyone to just make sure that they're turning in the forms that we need, which we'll be sharing with them this year. I would recommend more than ever, too, that just because so many more students apply early now, try to get those forms and meet with us this year about the recommendations so we can make sure we have it ready by the fall if you need it in the fall. And then many colleges also require 1 or 2 letters from teachers as well. And they usually prefer those teachers to be in those 5 core subjects. So like Mr. Adebato mentioned, the 5th would be world language, but the other 4 that you probably are imagining already, English, math, science, or history. But look on the websites to see what the requirements are, because some websites will just say any teacher, but others will very specifically mention those subjects. Some will even more specifically say, like MIT requires 1 teacher in the humanities and 1 teacher in a STEM. So sometimes the type of students who are applying to MIT don't think about, oh shoot, I need a humanities teacher for that application. And for the teachers as well, we'll guide them in our groups through how to decide who to ask, and most people ask it around May or so. But what they shouldn't, when we say ask, definitely don't want to just send an email. It's important to ask in person, and then you can follow up via email. So I mentioned, they require the counselor plus 1 or 2 teachers. Some colleges might allow you to send more than 2 teachers, but most don't. So asking more than 2 or 3 teachers is just going to be wasting the time of those teachers, because you're not going to be able to send that many. And you're also not usually going to read the letters. So it's not like you can ask 6 teachers and then just choose your favorites. Just we'll help them be thoughtful about asking teachers who have the most personal things to say about them as a student. And for example, sometimes people think, okay, I guess I should ask these 2 teachers because I got A's in those classes. But if you got A's in those classes and just were always sitting back and never participating, the college already knows you got an A in the class, but the teacher's not going to have much to say about you. Sometimes it's actually a really good strategy if you have 1 low grade, but that teacher is going to talk about how much you persevered and how much you improved the grade throughout the year, or how kind you were in helping other students who were struggling. That can actually counterbalance just the grade they see on the transcript. And then some colleges do allow you to send an extra letter from someone other than a teacher, like a job supervisor or coach or advisor, but it doesn't take the place of a teacher letter. And it is very nice to do thank you notes after. Speaking for us, I know we probably spend at least an hour on every recommendation we write, and the same is true for teachers. And we do it outside of the day, so it is nice to acknowledge that. And then the essay, it's part of the common application, but that's where students get to tell. So in recommendation, the counselor and teacher are sharing what our story is about the student, but the essay is where they're sharing their own story. And their English classes will be helping them to work on those essays this spring. We'll also be talking about the essays in the groups that we have. But it is a very good idea to not come back next year without at least a draft, because this is, it's usually harder for people to do at the last minute. And then we usually also in May, we don't have the exact date yet, but the National English Honor Society organizes a panel for all the juniors of some admissions reps from a variety of colleges who come in and share their tips on the essay, and the students get to ask them questions as well. And then in the summer, we also have, usually in August, a morning where students can come and get help with various parts of the college application process, but it also includes an English teacher or 2 who will also be there to consult with students on their essays. Okay, and then this is my last one before passing it over to Mrs. Smith, just that activity list. So activity list is the term we use. You might also hear it described as a high school resume, but yeah, colleges like to just have some idea of what students are interested in or like to do in their free time outside of their classes. Because besides knowing that they're going to succeed in their classes, they want to make sure that their campus is still an interesting place to be and where students want to stay. So they need to, have some athletes to fill their sports teams. They need musicians to be in their orchestras and bands. They need, actors to be in their plays. So there's no recipe of that you need to have everything on the list, but you want to emphasize at least a few things that you've tried out or put some time into. And we do assign that. I've personally just assigned it this week on Google Classroom for my juniors so that they get it out of the way. It's something that helps us in writing their recommendation letters. It'll also be required for scholarship applications next year, and it's something that they'll put in their college applications. So they'll turn in something this year, and then they can certainly update it next year if they add new activities over the summer or next year. All right, and I think I will pass it back to Mrs. Smith so we're not here too late.
Thank you for your endurance. There's a lot of stuff. And believe me, I feel your pain. I have 2 boys in college, and actually my oldest is graduating this year with his master's in architecture. He's at NC State, and I have another son at Pitt, and then a 9th grader. So I understand where you're coming from, and there's a lot of pieces to this. I think the main thing we just went over with what's required for applications, colleges look at each thing to show a whole well-rounded picture of your children. And what's important to know is it's really the personal qualities that make the biggest difference, because you could have an amazing grade point average, but you need to show your personality, your interests, your curiosity, and those things are going to come out in lots of different ways, and that's what's really going to be valuable. So even in terms of the activities list, you don't need a million things. You need you need at least a handful and go deep into those. Find some leadership. Find something deeper, a deeper way of engagement. And that level of engagement is what puts you to next level. Okay, applications. So we've got all those different things that go into it. How do you actually apply? A couple ways you can apply. In the middle, college-specific applications. There are colleges who have their own specific ones, like Salem State or certain other ones have their applications on their websites. You go to the website, click on Apply Online, and that's your college-specific. More and more often, colleges are using Common Application. I think we saw, 1,100 schools, I think, now use that. It's very handy. One application, you fill out the same basic information you fill out the same basic information. Lots of colleges take those. But even the Common Application has pieces of it that you should be aware of that they're starting to ask. They want to, rather than having 2,000 applications, some of the things that are making you stand out are things like short answers like, why Bentley? Why UMass Amherst? And don't just say, oh, I love it, it's pretty, it's close to home. That's great. But are you showing that you researched the school? Are you showing how you're going to engage with that school? Because we're looking at colleges to see what they have for us. They want to look and see what you're going to add to their school. So when you're filling out your applications, that's what you need to show. You need to demonstrate or say, they can't read your mind. How are you going to say how you're going to offer their school? So commonapp.org, and we are all of us counselors are starting that this year so that students will finish it up over the summer, and so they'll be in good shape. What we're seeing more commonly, Common App and Niche offer this direct admissions. So if you fit a profile that they're looking for, some schools may directly reach out and say, we like what we're seeing, and maybe they take away the essay or so many other things that would typically be required and offer you a direct admission for you to apply. Okay, what are your options? Regular, early, enrolling, okay? Regular, usually January 1st is the deadline, usually January 1st to March deadlines. You apply by the deadline, you find out in March or April, okay? That's great. But like I've told my students, and we all share it with our students, what's happening next March and April? You're getting ready for fourth quarter internship. Do we really want to wait that long? That's a long time. So what we're encouraging our students, if it's going to stress you out, it's not worth it. But we're encouraging you to try to be on a timeline that gets you to apply to a college early. The deadlines are usually November 1st-ish. Down south, University of South Carolina and a couple other schools are October 15th, so they might be a little bit sooner, but mostly they're November 1st to November 15th, December 15th, something like that. You apply early, you find out early. You find out in December through February-ish. It's nice to know, especially for one of those safety schools, one of the schools you think you expect to get into. Sometimes it's just nice to know that you have a home after you graduate. So I would encourage you, I'm encouraging my students to do your best to try to get stuff done so we can try to get some of these early applications done. There's two options for early. Early action, you're just acting early. It's non-binding, you're not locking in, you're applying early, you're finding out, but you don't, between regular and early action, you don't have to make up your mind till May 1st. So you have time, and this is great, it benefits us as the applicant. Early decision, and what we're increasingly seeing is an early decision 1 and an early decision 2 option. Early decision means you are deciding early. You are deciding that if you accept me, I will go to your school. So I sign something, you parents sign something, your student signs something that says that I'm locked in, I want to go. But you can only do that to one school. Okay, so sometimes, and most schools don't have all of these options. What we usually see is a combination of early action and regular decision. And as you can imagine, early decision, you're locking in. We don't get a whole lot of those each year, but if you're applying to reach schools, we're getting information from schools like Northeastern, BU, Tufts, and they're accepting a huge percentage of the class that they take. They're saying 35 to 40% of the people at those schools are coming from early decision because they're a business. And if you're locking in, then you're guaranteeing that you're going to make that they're going to make that money. So you can see why it's becoming a bigger thing, and you can see why after early decision rolls around, they're like, oh, well, we like that plan, so we're going to offer early decision too. So I would say consider that, but yes, it ramps up the stress on you, right? And it ramps up all the research you have to do, the conversations you have to have with financial aid. I'll be talking a little bit later about financial aid stuff too. Rolling, Quinnipiac is a school that has rolling. They decide as they go along. Sometimes colleges wait to see who has applied by their deadline so they can get a sense for what kind of class that they want to put together. Rolling typically are not as competitive, and they decide as they go along. Okay, state. Previously, as Ms. Minty mentioned with the SAT policy and how so many schools have gone test optional, previously there was a policy if you had below a 3.0, you had to, they couldn't take anyone below a 2.0, and they still can't. 2.0, remember, is a C. If you had below a 3.0, which is a B, then you had to do better on those standardized test scores, the SAT or the ACT. That was their previous policy. Or a little bit shaky because we usually find out kind of the last minute about what the school's policies are moving forward. But currently, many of them and most of them are still test optional. So this is why we say, be sure you go to each college's admissions website to make sure you know exactly what they say. And there's just thousands of colleges. We just can't keep up on their changes every single year. So just check their website, just so you know. Okay, there is something, we know college has gotten to be more expensive, so we want you to be aware that that there's an initiative with community colleges that you can go to community college for free. And that is really powerful, because it doesn't mean that you only have a 2-year degree, and some careers don't need more than a 2-year degree. If you went to a 2-year school, around here is it's typically Middlesex, you could go for 2 years and be part of this A to B, associates to bachelor degree. It's called the Commonwealth Commitment, and that's an agreement that if you do your 2 years and want to be part of this program, you will automatically be able to transfer to wherever, UMass Lowell, UMass Amherst, whatever state school. If you have at least a 2.5, and if you have over a 3.0, you also get a tuition benefit at the next school. Mass Art, Mass Maritime are more specialized public schools, so they have their own unique situations. I will say, since we have an international population here, it is free. Middlesex is free, but if you're not a U.S. citizen, they have certain, sometimes it depends on what the visa is. There's some qualified and there's some nuances to that. Okay, so just to recap, juniors this year should visit a college, get a sense for what you like. There are so many colleges. It's the blessing and the curse of being in the Northeast. You have so many choices. It's the blessing and the curse of being in this area. The best way, even if you don't go on the campus, visit the campus. Attend the college fair, rows and rows of colleges. Look at the majors, talk to people. They're there, they love what they do. Ask them, how does food work? When do students move off campus? Are they guaranteed housing all 4 years? You're not gonna say something that they haven't heard before or they're not willing to answer. They are there to help you and be a resource for you. So get a better sense for what it feels right for you. Create this list of schools, narrow them down in different ways, get your activity list done, ask for your letters of recommendation, do the counselor recommendation form. Some counselors want that by the end of the school year. I know I'm not going to get mine done over the summer, so mine are due the first day of senior year, and other counselors are in between that at different points. But get that done before you come back senior year. Create and begin the Common App and write your draft essay. And I'll be back for financial stuff. Ms. Minty?
Okay, this is just a few more slides for me. You're getting sick of hearing from me, I apologize. So just some tips for so students are doing the majority of this process, but the ways that parents can be most helpful, do encourage them to drive the bus. So not only so they'll be more prepared after they actually leave your home to survive and be successful, but also from a college standpoint, it's far more impressive to them to get a call or an email from a student, because they're looking at them as adults. They are not particularly impressed if they feel like that student is not confident enough to reach out to them and their parent is doing everything for them. Second point, if there are restrictions such as location, maybe your child has got their heart set on going to California for college, but you're saying, no way, you need to stay within this certain radius, make sure to share those things up front so they're not directing their search in the wrong direction. One thing that it is helpful to be aware of, because deadlines for college are not flexible, and I feel like over the past several years, especially school deadlines and other kind of things have gotten a lot more flexible, especially if someone's sick or something happens, they can turn something in a day or two late. You cannot turn a college or a financial aid application in a day or two late. So the students, we share it with them, and they should be aware of it, but it certainly wouldn't hurt for you also to keep an eye on those deadlines. And I always encourage students, because you may get sick on a deadline, or we may have a hurricane, try to aim for getting things in at least a few days in advance. And then college visits, you've heard enough about that. But as far as cost, which Ms. Smith is going to get more into the financial aid piece and scholarship piece, Mr. Addabata is going to talk about, don't immediately rule colleges out based on what appears to be a huge difference in cost. For example, Boston University for many years has been on record as maybe, some years it's been the most expensive university in the country. However, I have a student several years ago who his cost to go to BU was $5,000 per year because of his dad's income, which was also not a super low income. I think it was $50,000 or $60,000 a year, and BU costs $5,000. So it is important to do your research, and we also will be educating your students as well on how to estimate what would be your expected contribution based on your income. This is important, I think, for both your and your student sanity, not to, I think it becomes something during junior and senior year that everywhere they go, they feel like all anyone is ever bringing up is college, and they just shut down. On the flip side, you're going to be stressed out if you're never talking about it. So a suggestion we heard a while back, and we hear good reports on, is if as a family you agree upon maybe once a week during a certain time that you are going to get together and talk about, okay, where are you at with this and that? But that's an agreed upon time, so it's not just a everyday, hey, what's going on with your college applications? And then similar to that first one, definitely don't create the accounts on behalf, or send emails trying to pretend you're the student. They do need their own accounts, actually, especially for scholarships and other things. They simply won't function if you created them and it wasn't their own email address. All right, and then this is important for anyone who has any kind of disability, whether physical or mental health. They're just like we have sometimes students who receive accommodations in high school based on disabilities. Students may be eligible for accommodations in college as well. So if they currently have a 504 and IEP, what colleges will need to see in order to see if they would qualify for accommodations in college is less the 504 of the IEP and more the documentation of the disability and the ability of the student to communicate why certain accommodations are and aren't important for them. And often, colleges may require updated, if they're currently on a 504, we're not super pestering about making sure that you always have to get retested, but colleges will be stricter about. If it's a learning disability, often you need testing within the past 3 years. If it's a mental health, usually it's within the past year that they need something current to show that diagnosis is still current. And you don't have to have an IEP or 504 in high school to qualify for accommodations in college. So it could be that maybe a student has not had an issue in high school, but when they get to college, they discover they have a disability or there's something about the new environment that's more challenging. So they can always consult with that Disability and Support Services office at the college to find out what accommodations are available and to share what they're struggling with. And I think that last bullet is mainly for not only Massachusetts state universities, but particularly there, because typically one of their requirements is that every student has taken at least 2 years of a world language. But there are some students, if they have a language-based disability, who may be exempt from taking a world language in high school, and so they would also be exempt from that requirement for those colleges, as long as, again, they can document that they were exempt. All right, and then this, again, is a niche thing. It doesn't apply to everybody, but just to be aware, if your student is a particularly competitive athlete who would be recruited for either Division I or II varsity sports at a college, they would need to be approved as eligible through the NCAA. For Division III, this is not required, but for Division I or II, it would be. It's not usually too difficult. The main thing, what they're just trying to make sure is that any recruited athlete is also a decent student. So for Division I, they have a minimum requirement of a 2.3 GPA. However, they have a different system of calculating that GPA. So if this is a possibility, it is something where we would encourage you to go to that NCAA website for details. They should create a profile on that website at least by this year, and then request to send a copy of their junior year transcript to the college, so that, to NCAA, so they can verify your eligibility. Okay. And my last slide for the night, then just a few more from Mrs. Smith as well, is just to mention gap year. This is, again, not something that too many students do, but I've had a handful over the years, and it's far more common at, believe it or not, like at the really elite, expensive private prep schools. It's not just kind of taking a year off and taking a break. It's doing something intentionally before heading off to college, particularly maybe if a student is feeling a little burned out, or they're feeling like, I really don't have much direction yet of what I want to do. There are programs, and it's a gigantic variety. Some are internship kind of career-based programs. Some are cultural immersion, which is similar to study abroad in college. There's even ones called semesters, where you're out on a sailboat, but you're also taking college courses. And they can either be for the whole year, some are just for the summer, some are for a semester. But the recommendation, if a student is considering this, would still be to put in their applications next year. But then if they would request from a college that they are most interested in once they're accepted, to defer their admission for a year to do that gap year program. Okay, and part of the reason to apply, not to wait until after the gap year to apply, is also that after they're gone, they don't have all our help to work on the applications, and particularly if they're going to be out on a sailboat or in a remote country without access to internet, it's a lot more difficult to work on those applications. All right, now I'll pass it back to Mrs. Smith just for a tiny bit about the financial aid. There is a separate financial aid night that goes into a lot more detail too.
I hope you're getting a lot out of this. Okay, affordability. We know that college expenses have just blown up, and it's gotten extremely expensive. Rest assured that I don't think I've ever seen a student go to a college and pay the entire price. There's the initial upfront cost, but I've never seen that that's actually what people pay, okay? On June 11th, they're gonna go into the weeds about financial aid and investments and how the forms you'll need and things like that and the nuances to that. So especially if you have unique situations, I would encourage you to come to that. And the people who run that are not us. They're the people who do financial aid offices at a college. Okay, so financial aid can come from a lot of places. It can come from the federal government, it can come from the state. There's certain state forms that you can fill out, come directly from colleges and universities, come from private agencies and employers, or matching, or a lot of different things like that. So for institutional, that means, so there's two different kinds of financial aid. There's merit and there's need-based. Merit is you have something about you that your student that colleges really like. They like the grade point average. They really are trying to encourage somebody with a strong grade point average to come to their schools. That's merit aid. Or maybe you play the organ and Assumption College will give you a scholarship for playing the organ at some of their events, which is pretty cool. I could do that. Like my son went to a school and the mascot was a panther, so he got $1,000 at Pitt for because they're also the Panthers. I'm completely happy to accept that. So that's merit aid. Need-based that's when they look at your income, and that's federal government. So the FAFSA is going to be the form you fill out. It's going to be based on the it's going to be based on the taxes you fill out this year. And then you'll create an account, your student will create an account, and they link it up with the IRS. More competitive or private schools may also ask you to do the CSS profile to determine how much aid you need and your ability to pay. These are the majority of the things that you're going to do. How it works out for when your child applies to college, typically when the admissions person reviews, there will be a lot of scholarships that will be determined at that time. And then you'll do your FAFSA and they'll determine your need-based, and then you'll get more after that. And sometimes colleges on their website, I will say so much of the financial aid part really needs parent support. So if you go to a college's website, you will see a financial aid link, or financial aid link on their website. Go to that. And if you're trying to get a sense for if a college is affordable or not, they have something called, it used to be called the EFC, Estimated Family Contribution. Now it's the Student Aid Index. And they're going to ask you questions about what's your net income. Sometimes I might ask your student's grade point average, but you go through this and it usually only takes a couple minutes and they'll give you a sense for what to expect. So when you're looking at colleges, that's a good way of knowing about how much you should expect from these colleges. But when you go on their financial aid website, you can find out exactly what their process is. Okay. Financial aid events, MEFA, Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, has webinars on their website all the time, and they are super helpful, and you can also talk to them directly one-on-one. You can email them and ask for a time that you can speak or go back and forth, so they're very helpful. Okay, aids, scholarships and grants, free money. Loans are determined by what we just saw earlier with the FAFSA, and that could be through the government, or there might be private ones. Usually the private ones have higher interest rates. Work study. What work study is, it's not like they give you $1,000. Work study means that they will help you find a job on campus or some job that will work around your schedule to earn that $1,000 in a paycheck that comes like a regular paycheck. So it's not like $1,000 up front. So that's work study. Okay, MCAS, it still has a purpose. If your student scored in the top 25%, then they will automatically get a tuition discount. Hold on to that letter. They will get notified in the fall. Hold on to that letter if they qualify for the Adams. Typically, they have to have advanced and proficient scores. Most of the time here in Burlington, typically the top 25% have gotten advanced on, almost all of them have advanced on both. And it's based on your first attempt with the science in 9th grade and English and math in sophomore year. And to keep this, you need to keep a 3.0 in college, and but it's good if you take a gap year, different whatever, you have to use it within 6 years of graduating. The other option is the COPLIC. COPLIC is for people who weren't in the top 25% but still did well, and they have to have advanced on at least one of those and proficient on the others. And if you are close, you can retest to see if you can pull your scores up to be eligible. And you will be notified. Joe, when's that notification going out, in the spring?
Yeah, coming soon, probably sometime in March.
Probably sometime in March, so sometime in the next month or so. You want to do the next screen? So with the COPLIC, you get the scores you need, but they have an extra step. So you have to have 2 supporting documents, and you can have them in a variety of different ways. Seal of biliteracy, AP scores, outstanding achievement, something you've done at work, leadership. So there's a lot of different ways of ways to be getting the COPLIC, so just be aware of that. And these are only to be used in Massachusetts public colleges, not private, unfortunately. Oh, Mr. Adubato is going to tie us up for the night.
All right, we're almost there. You guys have done great. I appreciate your patience. Again, we don't do this all at once to the juniors. It's spread out over the whole spring. I just want to reiterate that. So the other thing in senior year, our scholarships, that's another opportunity to get some sort of financial assistance with college. Burlington High School works with various local fraternal civic organizations, youth programs, donors, all sorts of, from businesses, memorial scholarships. So we provide all that through Scholarship America. It's a website where we're able to upload these applications. We also have a general application. And then another type of scholarship is Adopt a Class. How many parents have heard of Adopt a Class? I'm sure many of you have. You probably contributed hours to Adopt a Class. So senior year is when you can actually cash in on that. So parents accumulated hours, kindergarten through 8th grade. Students are responsible to accumulate the volunteer hours 9 through 12. And then students will apply based on the amount of community service they've completed. They will get a financial award for that. So that's Adopt a Class. All applications will be in the Naviance program next year. They're organized in a manner that's easy to read. One of the reasons we like the Naviance program as well. And the scholarships will start to become available next fall. Local scholarships, where a majority of our students apply to, those won't be available till right around March 1st of senior year. Use caution. Again, you can make decisions on using a service to help you research scholarships. We have not heard of any parent gaining a tremendous amount of scholarships due to working with an agency. Not to say it doesn't happen, but again, a lot of the services you can, through your own research, you can actually do a lot for free. Please be sure links that you're using are accurate, especially before you're filling out financial aid information. We had a student fill out the FAFSA, and then she had to pay $80, and the FAFSA's free. So come to find out, it was a different FAFSA website that took her information, and they filled out the FAFSA for her, but she paid $80, and she didn't realize that's what she was doing. So be aware of websites. Use caution. You can go to the next one. Some upcoming events we just want you to be aware of. Course selection process breakfast. We just sent out an email today about that. If parents are interested, feel free to stop by the high school that morning. The college fair, you all have a flyer for that college fair. We recommend students attend that. And then those are the 2 more breakfasts coming up. Parents can certainly attend those as well. We talk about support services in April. We're still waiting to confirm that. College topics, that's a good time to hear some things you can be doing over the summer, getting ready for the next fall. And then you heard Mrs. Smith talk about the financial aid night, which is on June 11th. And again, this was mentioned earlier, but we do have the workshop over the summer. We recommend students go. We usually publicize it sometime in June. Students can come in, they can meet with a counselor. We can help them get a leg up before the year starts. It can be real advantageous to get some things done beforehand. There's also an English teacher available. We had 3 English teachers cover this last year. They worked with students in 20-minute blocks, and it was pretty helpful. A lot of students came in with kind of a shell of an essay, and they helped tweak it, refine it, and kind of improve upon that essay. So please keep your eyes out for that. All right. Thank you all. We appreciate your patience. I'm glad we were able to use the overhead tonight. I was a little nervous that wouldn't happen. You do have 2 documents when you came in. We're going to ask you to fill those out. One's an evaluation of tonight. Please give us some feedback. Let us know your thoughts. The other one is the Naviance form. Fill that out. You'll get an email. If you don't get an email sometime within the next week or so, let me know. Shoot me an email. You should get an auto email. It could go to spam, but keep your eyes out for that as well. We appreciate, again, any feedback you can provide us. And we're more than happy to answer any questions either now or we can answer some individualized questions after. But does anyone have any general questions? All right, you're all free to go. Thank you.